Welcome to the Infrastructure Podcast. My name is Anthony Oliver, and today we're talking about EVs, electric vehicles. Specifically, we're going to look at what has to happen to ensure that the process of refueling electric or hybrid vehicle is as painless as popping petrol or diesel into a conventional fuel tank. The conundrum of how and where to charge up the vast number of new EVs now flooding onto the UK streets is being wrestled with up and down the country, not just by owners and potential owners, but also by the highway authorities and property managers who are increasingly under pressure to make more charging facilities available. So where are we now? Well, according to the latest government statistics in January 2023, there were 37,000 public electric vehicles charging devices installed in the UK, and of these, 19% were rated as rapid devices or above, while 57% were fast charging devices. Whatever that means. Well, in terms of charger location, 32% are on street, while 49% are known as destination chargers, places to charge up on arrival at a destination such as a car park. I presume the mystery deepens. Anyway, what is clear is that there's an uneven geographical distribution of charging devices within the UK. While the UK average is 56 per 100,000 people, in London that number is 131. However, the number of charging stations is growing. It's up 7% since last October. But given that the UK government is banning the sale of new petrol and diesel engine vehicles in 2030, the question, of course, is whether the rollout of charging stations and, of course, the increased grid capacity required to sit behind those stations is growing fast enough. So to find out and to guide us through the UK's EV charging challenges, my guest today is Asif Ghafoor, Chief Executive of BE.EV, which currently working with communities around Manchester region and across the UK to roll out new charging infrastructure. Asif, welcome to the Infrastructure Podcast.
Thank you for giving me the chance to help clear the mist for you.
Brilliant. Well, I look forward to it. So I've been watching your progress, Asif, via your regular social media updates as BE.EV accelerates its rollout of charging stations. Before we talk about that, did I get the EV challenge about right? How do you describe the challenge of the UK?
Well, we're at the beginning. And if you've been around in the beginning of the motor vehicle, we'd be discussing how we're going to fuel and get petrol into these vehicles and how do we build tanks and so on. So, all of the areas and the mystery which people have and the concern, you've hit the nail on the head, and hopefully that's what I'll try and help you solve.
Brilliant. I'm looking forward to that. A bit about BE.EV. Do I describe the name? Do I say the name right? It's owned by Juna, which you founded in 2020. Is now backed by Octopus Energy Generation. Right now you're installing charging stations across the northwest, around Manchester and Leeds, and you've got a planned rollout across the whole UK. What makes your approach different?
Well, first of all, with BEV, we dropped the dot to make life easy. And our whole approach was to think about the end user and start from that perspective. Why would somebody go somewhere to go and charge? And once they get there, what type of experience are they looking for? And then fundamentally, how do we connect the infrastructure we build back into the communities we're going to be operating in? Because there's so many times in my career and other people's careers, I know, where they've built infrastructure and the community are generally quite angry and unhappy about it being there. And so this, for us, is a great opportunity to actually build that community-based approach and really get that connection going.
I'm going to say, because you do talk a lot about being community first, creating bespoke, design-led, fully funded EV charging solutions that add value and delight your customers. In reality, what does that actually mean? Is that about having lots of them, or is it about having really great ones, or is it about being cheap? What makes it really kind of community first and customer delighting?
Well, you touched on at the start about destination charging. You got to think about where people go every day or every week or twice a month, and what do they do when they get there. And we're trying to put charging into locations where people actually becomes part of their life. And we've got 22,000 members signed up today. It's an open access network, and we listen to how they charge and how they use the network. And they tell us they use it more like how they use their mobile phone, charging often where it's convenient, as opposed to the old days where we ran a fuel vehicle down to empty and then refilled up again. So it's about thinking about that experience and where's the best locations.
Okay. I mean, the EV charging market does seem something of a wild west at the moment. I mean, you say it's, the early days, a bit like the early days of the motor car. I mean, there are lots of different suppliers, lots of different products. It is confusing. I mean, how do you summarize it?
I wouldn't disagree with you about it. It feels like the Wild West on this side of the fence as well. And very often it's because people who have land don't know what they should be asking for. And people who are end users are confused. We've gone from petrol, diesel, all the way to, kilowatts and different speeds of charging and so on. And in that environment, you are going to find some cowboys come along in the Wild West and actually do try and take advantage. And we're very concerned about that. And as is the industry. And the industry set up a central body now called Charge UK to try and look at ways of making this less confusing and really get people more engaged.
Okay, well, we'll get into a little bit about demystifying EV charging in a moment, but first, just a little bit more about BEV. You've got an ambition to install 1,000 chargers, I think, by the end of 2024. You're around about 200 and a bit now. I mean, is your target still achievable?
Yeah, in the next 2 months, we'd have got another 150 odd chargers in the ground. So it takes time, and the time is spent really trying to find power. So once you've secured the land, trying to get the power to a site and get that connection. So the whole build-up period can take 18 months, 24 months. So that's where the time is spent. We've been working away now for a few years now in building up this network. So yeah, we think it's very achievable. But there are so many barriers along the way which we're trying to tackle.
Okay. I mean, presumably the lack of charging capacity is still the major blocker to the uptake of EVs in the UK.
Yes and no. I think you got to remember today the number of chargers on the road are measured against the number of vehicles, and there's only circa 2 to 3% of vehicles on the road today are electric. So by 2030, it's projected to get to 30%. And what we're building now is a network, along with our peers in the market, building networks for that future growth. People who've started on that journey are kind of part of this process of knowing it's going to happen and are plotting and thinking this through. But it's going to require a behavior change. So when people are throwing around figures of, government's infamous 300,000, our simple response is, what does that mean?
Right, yeah.
Because we don't recognize it.
Well, let's talk a bit about what actually these words mean. I talked about rapid chargers. We can also talk about ultra fast chargers. We can talk about destination chargers, home chargers. I mean, give us a few definitions. What's out there? What should we be looking for?
Well, you got 1 out of 4 there, which is good.
Right.
So if you look at the 4 speeds, they're kind of going from slow, which is home charging, lamppost charging, fast, which is all day dwell charging, all the way through to rapid and ultra rapid. And ultra rapid is like your forecourt where you're pulling in 10, 15 minutes, charge and on you go. So they're kind of your 4 speeds. And but it gets more complicated because each vehicle battery can be a different size. So you could have, a lot of our stations have got rapid, ultra rapid charging. But if your car has got a small battery, if you're a Nissan Leaf, it doesn't matter. You'll get the size of what your battery can take, not what we're actually providing from the source.
Right.
And that overcomplicates it a bit as well.
So with your chargers, it doesn't really matter what car you've got. You can plug your car into your charger. It just depends on what you've got as to how fast you actually get the fuel.
The constraining factor always in this space is the battery, and the battery is trying to protect itself. Most people don't read the car manual because you get a new car, you want to get out there and drive it, not sit there and read the manual for 2 days. But the manuals, and hence they explain very carefully how a car battery charges. And there's different intake going on if you turn up in a 0 to 20% charge all the way to when you get to 80 to 100%, and you end up in a trickle charge. And the manufacturers recommend you keep your battery in a 20 to 80% zone,
right?
Which is then gives you quite steady charging, but no one's read that.
Right. So it leads to the question: what's good and what's bad? Is a world full of ultra fast chargers better than a world full of fast chargers, or a world full of slow chargers? Or do you need all of them?
You need all of them because you have to look at the dwell behavior. I've been quite vocal against lamppost charging because I just think battery sizes are going to get stronger, cables strewn across our public highway. Lampposts weren't really made for charging. And actually, when we did huge lamppost replacement projects and put in LED lighting, we actually reduced the power in them. So, but it has to be the right charging at the right speed, which is also future-proofed. What we don't want to be doing is putting infrastructure in today and in 3 years' time taking it out and putting in different infrastructure. Right. But there's a whole world here. If you're going to be dwelling all day, you should be on a fast charger. If you're going to be in a more forecourt environment, you should be in a ultra rapid.
Okay, so round here in London where I am, all these lamppost chargers that are appearing everywhere. Short-term thinking, you talk about putting the customer firmly at the centre of everything we do. You're saying is that isn't necessarily what they want?
Well, so the one thing I'll always kind of push back a little bit with the customer side is we didn't put petrol pumps outside people's houses, even though it would have been massively convenient. And I know people are saying, I want chargers outside my house. To get the right speed and creating a quality of charging, what we believe is actually building concentrated networks with local hubs. We think that works a lot better. And if there is not enough space for local hubs, you then start looking at on-street charging. Our pavements aren't wide enough. There's not enough space, the cables. There's a whole host of challenges with on-street charging. So we're trying to focus more on hubs. And you look at the rollout we've done with Trafford Borough Council, that's what we've done, and it's working, and it's been quite successful, and we've seen that in the data and the usage as well.
What about pricing? I mean, I hear from my neighbours that it's cheaper to charge at night. Is there a range of tariffs between suppliers? Is there a range of tariffs between times of day? I mean, who's regulating this?
Well, it doesn't necessarily need regulation. What you find is if you were to go out and just do traditional public charging, most operators are within a range and they're not that far different. We're one of the cheapest, bizarrely, which wasn't an attempt. We've just basically been buying better power prices. But actually, so that from that perspective, the market's kind of self-regulating. The key thing is over time, especially with the half-hourly meters going in, we can actually buy and offer different rates at different times. And there's been some trials done with Octopus Energy, where they've done that with one of our competitors between 7 and 9 p.m. That's where I think this market will develop over time and actually makes it a lot more efficient because there's less strain on the grid at that time as well.
I mean, given that batteries in cars are getting better and better, range is going up, is there still such a thing as range anxiety?
Most people who don't own an EV have range anxiety because they worry about this. Most people who've bought an EV and have learned how to operate and drive an EV and actually learned how to charge an EV have actually built this into their life. And my business partner, he says when he goes on long journeys, it's a great opportunity to stop to change the baby's nappy. And so they time the baby nappy changes with the charge events and look for locations where they can do that. And it's actually thinking about this in a different way. It's a big, massive behavioral change, which is going to be required. So there's a lot of psychology, and going back to that end user experience, we're very aware of that element of psychology required here.
I mentioned also regional differences. I mean, London having 3 times the number of charging points compared to, say, Manchester or Liverpool. I mean, is that a problem or a surprise? I mean, presumably this is a demand-led decision, providing electric charging facilities.
Yeah, again, we need to be careful on the numbers game. You could have 30 lampposts in London, and you could have 10 rapid, ultra-rapid chargers in Greater Manchester, and the Greater Manchester wins hands down. So it's not just the numbers, but it's also quality. A lot of the urban London chargers are on street. They're fast, largely because there's not enough power, not enough space, and the charging experience isn't great. And only one or two residents can get on the charger in a day. So it's ultimately quantum's going to be important, but it's a quantum of power available and the quantum of potential accessibility, which is probably a better way to measure this than just pure numbers.
Okay. Interesting stuff, and I am starting to be slightly more demystified now, so thank you for that. Let's talk a bit about you, Asif. Your background is in infrastructure finance. Most recently, you were running the investment team at Amy. I mean, how did you get into EVs and becoming an entrepreneur?
Well, I've always been I've done quite a lot of work in Amy, in particular looking at building out new businesses and new business streams. And on the back of that, I got quite interested into the future mobility space. And from there, worked backwards and said, actually, a great business opportunity would be to start in EV charging, and a strong passion around green and sustainability as well. So from there, unfortunately, in this market today, we pivot very quickly. We call it a fast fail model. We trial something, we stop, and we do something else. In a large organization, that's very, very hard because you have to go through all the committees and explain it and so on. So this is naturally this business works better as an entrepreneur. Right. And I've had the experience all my life, so why not do it?
Okay. I mean, you spent 8 years at BAE Systems and 14 years at Amy, and in banking before that. I mean, obviously you're looking very relaxed there now. Presumably life as a startup CEO, it's sitting well with you.
I think you've got me confused with someone really old there. All those years you're throwing at me, Anthony. I'm not very happy. But no, this is far from. It may look like a swan on top of the water, but underneath it's pretty frantic. I think the question I often ask is, I kind of started this business when I turned 50. And this is a young man's business, really. And but actually, I've got the energy. I love it. I'll probably work 6 days a week without fail, long hours. But I wouldn't do that if I wasn't enjoying it and just building something and working with great people. Got such an amazing team as well. I'm bringing on so many new people. I just love all the challenge with it.
I mean, you're from Liverpool originally, and you built your career largely in London, though. I mean, BEVs now focus initially on the Northwest. I mean, is this your homecoming?
Oh gosh, if I'm from Liverpool, you would never be so proud to be building a network in Manchester, in Greater Manchester. The big rivalry there. But actually, we've got an amazing client in Transport for Greater Manchester and working with the local authorities and the private sector there, that actually everyone always wants to start in London. I was like, actually, the size of just Greater Manchester is just slightly smaller than the size of Norway. Right. And if we can conquer that and get this right there, we can conquer this across the whole of the UK. We've got massive growth going on at this moment, looking at in Scotland, North East, North and South Wales, Yorkshire, got teams in Nottingham, Derby, Birmingham, South Wales, South West, and in London. So, we've got quite a big expansion going on, and we've kind of headed back to London rather than start from London.
And you'll eventually get to Liverpool, presumably, though, will you?
Well, we've actually got quite a lot of infrastructure going into Liverpool. I have to admit, it was one of the easy early ones because I knew every road and I knew where to go. So rather than faffing around thinking, where should we start in Liverpool? I was like, okay, here's the map. Let's go and speak to. We're working with a company called Taskers, which is a DIY department store, sells furniture and stuff. Early on, I was like, I spent my childhood with my mom wandering around Taskers. If we don't put chargers in there, I'm going to be very upset. So we're in both of their sites at present as well, putting the infrastructure in.
So we now know where the strategy is built from. I know you've always been very community minded. I mean, for many years you worked as a non-exec at Wandle, a housing association. And why is community so important to you?
I think there's a general concern I have that we have a society who feels like things happen to them rather than they're involved. And, I worked on building the Schools for the Future program and you end up building this beautiful school. Most people are quite unhappy, quite angry. And I saw this time and time again in infrastructure. For me, this is then important that we actually are working with local communities. We're employing people locally where possible. We're trying to work with the universities in developing not just infrastructure, but data and future streams of business. And ultimately, if we can build this ecosystem, I've always said it's a bit like the future cotton of Manchester. We could export this EV infrastructure and the way we build this by bringing an ecosystem with us. And that's our ambition.
Okay. You do a lot of travelling, and I presume you've got an EV. Which one and why?
I'll be proud to say I don't actually own a car directly. So I have a car in my name, which I give to my mum and dad to drive. Because they can't get a car themselves anymore. But I actually use public transport. I love the dead time when no one can actually ring me and actually get some work done. And I travel around on the train or on my bike, really. So I am carless. But if you ask me to choose a car, because I spend my time also in my colleagues' cars, then the Polestar is the one I'm recommending everyone, particularly the Polestar 2.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, there you go. Recommendation on the Infrastructure Podcast. As if I've known you for a while, and you're an absolute bundle of energy, a human dynamo. And you talked about bicycling there and public transport. How else do you relax on your one day a week that you have off?
Well, actually, it's great just to catch up with friends, family, and some days I call it my sofa day, where I just don't want to kind of just chill and catch up on a bit of Netflix and box sets and so on. But I'm quite social, so I'm out a lot. I meet people, keep in touch with people, phoning, contacting, and so on. And I've kept up my gym as well, regardless of it just means having to get up a bit earlier. So I get up at 5:30 now.
Right. Yeah.
I used to get up at 6:30 when I was in Amy, so I've lost an hour that way.
Okay, well, let's talk about the wider picture. Presumably the government's ban on sales of petrol and diesel cars is a good thing for EVs, is it?
The fact that we've had a consistent policy for 4 years is a miracle, not just a good thing. I know there's a bit of pressure being put on now to move the target and so on. But the good thing is worldwide, not just in the UK, motor manufacturers have started switching their production to electric. And so we're going to have cleaner fuel vehicles. So even if the government was to move it 5 years forward to 2035, for example, that whole infrastructure of cars coming through and vehicles coming through, that's already started. And that's positive.
Okay. Let's talk a bit about the future. I mean, you're backed by Octopus Energy Generation. I suppose, but like all energy distribution companies, they're limited by grid capacity. Firstly, is that the big barrier to overcome? And if so, what has to happen to overcome that barrier?
So Octopus Energy Generation, they themselves are an investment arm of Octopus Energy. And they are looking at investing into a large number of renewables. And so they're a great partner because we can then work with their solar business, with their heat pump business and so on, where we've got customers who are looking at a wider renewable play than just EV. And of course, as a just in pure energy, they're pretty powerful. They don't actually control the grid capacity. That grid capacity is National Grid and the district network operators and the UK split out. So they're kind of working, they're not working directly into that. But you're right.
But they can influence it, though. They can influence it, I imagine.
Yeah, and they are themselves a disruptor. So our actual investor is pretty well known in the market to be thinks differently, thinks laterally. And that's why we were really excited when they decided to invest in us, because it wasn't just the money. The money's great, but we wanted them to be working alongside us, supporting the way we think and creating a different experience.
Because I suppose the challenge is how can the charging network keep pace with the scale of the EV revolution, which is predicted?
Well, you've hit the nail on the head on grid capacity. So unfortunately, we've decided to electrify everything. So it's not just EV, gas boilers are going to be banned and so on. But we've got a network which is really still hanging around the 1950s. Trying to solve a 2020s problem. So time and time again, we find that grid capacity, the speed, we're able to get access to power, the basic information of how much power is available is so antiquated and so slow. It takes up to 90 days to get an answer of if there's any spare capacity available. And then it could run out really quickly, and there's loads of problems. But that's what's slowing down the rollout of not just EV, but electrification in the UK,
Right.
which means we're reliant on fossil fuels if we can't sort that problem out.
I mean, finally, you're driving for change, and you're talking to a lot of potential partners. I mean, what's the most commonly heard barrier that you hear when you're talking to a potential EV charging partner, be that a supermarket or be that a furniture store or be that a gym, whatever?
For me, it's basic understanding. We've gone from talking English to talking gobbledy electrician. And for me, we spend a huge amount of time. We get approached sometimes by someone saying, "Oh, I need to install 2 chargers." And my first response is, "No, you don't. What we need to do is take a massive step back, and we will help you in devising a strategy. Let's work with you on your estate, rather than just putting in some infrastructure and having it ripped out in 2 years' time. Let's think about what is your use, your end user, the dwell behavior, the characteristics and the outcomes you're looking for." And we spend a huge amount of time as a business, as a team, just developing the strategy. And then if they want to contract, sometimes I've told them to go and work with some of my competitors who do home charging or do office charging, because that's not our space. But this isn't about selling assets. It's about getting people. We've got loads of data. We understand this market. I feel it's my responsibility to really help people get the right solution so that actually this whole market drives forward.
Did you say it's about culture shift and about actually getting people thinking in different ways? I mean, do you think that the BEV model will change over time? I mean, are you looking at inductive charging? Will you be looking towards fuel cells?
I think battery will play quite an important part in this space over time. There will become a point where the grid doesn't need to keep on reinforcing, and we'll be able to store in off-peak periods and consume in peak periods and so on. So again, working with Octopus Energy Generation and having them sitting alongside us, gives us that skill set and knowledge base, and we can tap into their teams to help us on stuff like this as well. But battery is big. I think all the stuff people talk about, mats and induction and vehicle to grid and all of this, they may well happen. My basic view always is, would I put £1 or into that business, and do I think I'll get a return back? And I think we're still a little bit early, as we are with hydrogen as well, which is a whole topic, isn't it, in itself?
Okay, well, it is a fascinating area and so much potential and so much to do. I mean, finally, what for you is the single thing that, if changed, would radically accelerate the EV revolution, radically accelerate BEV's model? And what's stopping that one thing?
I normally say power, but this time I'm going to change my answer. I'm going to say, because I'm old enough to remember, we need the Green Cross Code man. You remember the Green Man?
Absolutely,
in the 70s, who told us how to cross the road. We need the equivalent, basic understanding, knowledge base. We need the Green Cross Code EV person to be out there and actually just telling all of us the basics. We all learn the basics. We'll suddenly go, wow, this is actually what I want. And this is what I want to be helping support. So that'll help open up and land access. It'll get drivers more comfortable. People will understand how to charge, how to use their vehicles. And that's how we'll create that revolution.
Great stuff. Well, I think I'll probably take those quick definitions of chargers, and I'll stick that on the website so that we have kind of a ready reckoner that we can go to. It's great to speak to you again, Asif. A huge amount for us all to think about there. Thanks so much for joining me today on the Infrastructure Podcast.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Great stuff. That's all we've got time for today on the Infrastructure Podcast. We've got more in the pipeline, more guests to talk to as we continue to probe the big issues faced across the sector. And if you haven't done so already, do check out the Infrastructure Podcast website, www.infrastructure-podcast.com, where you will find background links to some of the issues discussed today and all the latest podcasts to listen to and to share with colleagues. So thanks for joining us today, and thanks again to Asif. I look forward to seeing you again very soon.